World War II was a long and devastating war filled with death and tragedy for all the countries involved. So today, we'll be talking about the tail end of the war, namely the push to Germany after D-Day, leading to their eventual surrender.
So first off, some background. The Battle of Normandy, which started on June 6, 1944, also known as D-Day, was the Allied push to exterminate Germany from Western Europe. This push was successful, and by late August, Paris and northern France were liberated from German control. This was one of the most important victories of World War II. First off, it was a huge psychological blow for the Nazis. Additionally, Hitler could no longer send troops through France to defend against Soviets attacking from the east.
So, what was next? The Allied forces decided the plan was simple. American and British forces would invade Germany from the west, while the Soviets continued their push from the east. The troops would meet and overwhelm German forces. The Germans were pretty much doomed, and Hitler and the Nazis recognized this. So they launched a last-ditch attack on Belgium in December 1944, known as the Battle of the Bulge. Hitler aimed to split the Allied forces on their march towards Germany, which would make it significantly harder to organize a coordinated attack.
Hitler and his troops attacked the Ardennes region of Belgium in a battle that lasted a brutal 6 weeks. As the Germans attacked, the Allied forces organized in a formation of a large bulge, giving rise to the battle's namesake. Allied air forces soon arrived to finish the job in Ardennes. It was a long, deadly battle, but the Allied forces eventually won. This was another pivotal victory for the Allies. It was essentially Hitler's last-ditch attempt at launching an offensive, and it did cause lots of damage to the Allied troops. In fact, it was the U.S. Army's costliest battle of the war, causing around 90,000 deaths.
Additionally, soldiers were faced with gruesome conditions throughout the battle, including extreme cold and Nazi espionage. But because the battle was won, the Allied forces now had a clear path to invade Germany and to victory. Nazi Germany's resources were drained from the taxing battle, and men and equipment alike were few. Soon after the Battle of the Bulge, the Allied forces resumed their advance through Western Europe towards Germany. And while they didn't face much opposition during their march, American forces discovered something much worse: the true extent of the war crimes Hitler had committed.
It was during this push that the Allied forces discovered the true horrors of Nazi Germany. They found gas chambers, crematoriums, humans thinned to the bone, and many more countless horrors. Though the US had known about Hitler's rampage against the Jews, no one was aware of the true and horrible extent of his regime. As the Allied forces continued to march through Germany, liberating Jewish prisoners as they go, Hitler became increasingly anxious. On the 25th of April, 1945, the last German troops withdrew from the Finnish Lapland and made their way to occupied Norway. In the same week, as the Allied forces closed in on Milan, Mussolini, the Italian dictator, was captured by Italian partisans. He was executed on the 28th of April, and his body was hung up in the center square of the city.
As both the Battle of Nuremberg and the Battle of Hamburg resulted in British and American occupation, with the Battle of Berlin still raging on, Hitler feared facing the same fate as Mussolini. With his escape routes cut off, Hitler committed suicide in his Führer bunker with Eva Braun, his wife of only 40 hours.
Shortly after, German forces in Italy, Berlin, Northwest Germany, and the Netherlands surrendered. On May 6 of 1945, General Hermann Nehoff surrendered Breslau, the fortress city, to the Soviets. And only 30 minutes after the surrender of Fortress Breslau, General Alfred Jodl offers the surrender of all forces fighting the Western Allies. That night, the interim leader of Germany, Karl Donitz, authorized the complete and total surrender of all German forces.
An unconditional surrender document for all German forces to the Allies was signed by General Jodl on May 7th.
In celebration of the German surrender, spontaneous celebrations broke out all over the world, from Western Europe to the United States. May 8th is now celebrated across Europe as Victory in Europe Day, and most of the Soviet Union celebrates the victory on May 9th.
Even with an ordered ceasefire, there were still German generals who refused the defeat and continued to fight. Fighting still continued shortly after the official surrender. The Donetsk government was dissolved shortly after as well.
On August 1st of 1945, the leaders of the United States, Britain, and the Soviet Union signed the Potsdam Agreement. The winning countries planned the new post-war German government, territory, and other disputes. They ordered German war reparations, demilitarization, and industrial disarmament, somewhat reminiscent of the result of the Treaty of Versailles.
France, angry it was not invited to the Potsdam Conference, refused to recognize any obligations from the agreement. Around this time, the Allied Control Council was also established. Its goal was to establish Allied authority over Germany.
So that's a summary of the Allied push to Germany after D-Day.
Obviously, there's a lot of information to cover and we glossed over some details, but we hope you learned something.